Hello and welcome to your Newsmax Daily for July 21st, 2025. It's the 202nd day of the year, the third of 4 Mondays this month. And if you have a flight on Alaska or Horizon Airlines today, you may have some delays. Check before you go. A technical issue causing a ground stoppage for the airline last night. As far as any weather concerns for flying, looks like we're in pretty good shape across most of the country today. And it's National Junk Food Day, which you likely celebrated over the weekend, right? Hope you had a great weekend doing whatever it is you like to do or need to do on the weekends. Maybe that included baseball or tennis or watching the UFC event from New Orleans or NASCAR yesterday. What a race that ended up being, with Denny Hamlin grabbing the checkered flag in overtime after a slight rain delay in Dover, Delaware. His Joe Gibbs Racing teammate Chase Briscoe came in second. If you are a NASCAR fan, you may remember me saying this a few weeks ago, but I am pleasantly surprised with Dale Jr.'s analysis and skills in the broadcast booth. Him and that team have really improved the watching experience, in my opinion. The big political stories on most of the weekend talkers, as we suspected, was the alleged Donald Trump birthday letter to Jeffrey Epstein in 2003, which would have been before his first conviction in 2005. Trump's crypto legislation signed last week, and Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard's Friday drop that President Obama and the Obama administration manufactured intelligence to create the 2016 Russian election interference narrative and then perpetuated the narrative. This morning, there is an AI-generated video on Trump's Truth Social showing President Obama being arrested. It starts with a clip of Obama saying in a campaign speech that no one, especially the president, is above the law. Newsweek simply says Trump posts AI video of Obama's arrest. But then the Huffington Post says Donald Trump shares utterly unhinged AI video of Barack Obama. And the Daily Beast says Trump, 79, posts deranged AI video of Obama being arrested. So you'll be hearing plenty about that today, and the headlines will get crazier throughout the day. The president also did exactly what he said he would do. He filed a $10 billion lawsuit against the Wall Street Journal, Rupert Murdoch, and others over the report of the alleged birthday note to Epstein. Let's start with Sunday Agenda and host Lidia Curanaj.
The Epstein story, it's not going away just yet. In an effort to put this to rest, this political crisis of its own making, President Trump directed the Justice Department to release all grand jury testimony regarding Epstein, subject, of course, to court approval. He also added, quote, "Nothing will be good enough for the troublemakers and radical left lunatics making the request. It will always be more MAGA." Trump's directive coming on the heels of this pathetic Wall Street Journal exclusive report. It claims that Trump sent Epstein a sexually suggestive letter back in 2003 for his 50th birthday. They have yet to provide or show this letter. And Trump not only denied writing the letter or the little doodle that came along with it, he called it false, malicious, and defamatory. He hit those responsible for the report where it really hurts them. The president filed a $10 billion defamation lawsuit against the owner of the Wall Street Journal, Rupert Murdoch, as well as his company, News Corp, its CEO, Robert Thomson, the Dow Jones, and the two reporters who wrote the article. And the next day, after this report came out, because I was filling in for Greg Kelly, I awoke to a flurry of texts from friends alerting me that this left-wing media critic was slamming me for not talking about the letter when I was guest hosting on Thursday. So the reason I didn't cover the letter was because it wasn't verified. You know, the Wall Street Journal report, it's not been corroborated. And as a journalist, call me crazy, you need verification before you slam anyone, never mind the president of the United States, with some ridiculous, heinous accusation. This whole Epstein scandal, it largely lives online on social media, by the way. I mean, among the conspiracy theorists and internet sleuths, because here's how everyday Republican voters actually feel about Trump since the controversy broke?
I mean, look, I think this one surprised me a bit because of all these complaints online going after Trump and the Epstein files. You might think his approval ratings were going down, Republicans. If anything, they're going up. Republicans who approve of Trump, look at our CNN poll. The prior one, 86%. The one out this week, 88% were Republicans. How about Quinnipiac? The prior poll, 87% approval of Republicans. This week out, 90% were Republicans. If anything, Donald Trump's approval rating has gone up since this whole Epstein saga started. He is at the apex or close there, too, in terms of his pop or not.
Wow, wow, wow. And that's CNN, folks, reporting this. Trump is at his apex. Trump is winning left and right, from the border to the economy. You know, I bet if the election was held again today, Trump would win by an even larger landslide. Trump's winning streak is enraging the left-wing loons so much so that this is all they can do, that they're weaponizing this Epstein saga against him because they've got nothing else. If Epstein was so important to the Democrats, why didn't they ask for full transparency when they had the House, the Senate, and even the White House?
The congressman could have gotten that from 21 to 25 when Democrats controlled the DOJ. Why? It was a crisis then. It's a crisis now. Why didn't Democrats call for it from 21 to 25?
So, I mean, you have to go back and look specifically at particular prosecutorial decisions and what was taking place in terms of the other cases. So I don't know. We could try to reconstruct that record.
If you see such a need to investigate this, why didn't you raise it during the Biden administration? I mean, we couldn't find that you made any public comments about Epstein in previous administrations.
Well, I would have been happy to raise it then as well. Frankly, we were focused on so many different pieces, but I have been one of the Democrats that has been consistent on what I call out Republican presidents for and Democratic presidents for.
Blah, 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 deflect and lies. They're full of it, and they know it. We all know it was President Trump who pushed for a full investigation of the Epstein files, along with Kash Patel and Dan Bongino, well, before they got into the White House.
Who's on the Epstein tapes, folks? Who's on those tapes? Who's in those black books? Why have they been hiding it?
You know, it's the same thing with Epstein's list. It's like, what the hell are these Republicans doing? What the hell are the House Republicans doing? They have the majority. You can't get the list?
So you're not only doubting Trump when you say that there's some kind of massive cover-up. You're doubting his now current head of the FBI, Patel, and deputy director of the FBI, Bongino. You really think that all three of these men would jeopardize their reputation, their integrity, everything they've stood for to protect low-life sex abusers? Come on, absolutely not. I'm not buying that narrative the left has been spinning. So anytime you sound remotely like a Democrat, like a Hakeem Jeffries, like an AOC, like Jamie Raskin, think long and hard about what's happening to you. As we New Yorkers like to say, you're being played. And as I've been saying all along about this Epstein thing, let the process play out.
That's Newsmax host Lidia Curanaj on Sunday Agenda. Attorney Alan Dershowitz, who I have pointed out many times on the podcast, represented Jeffrey Epstein in a completely different case. But he knew Epstein well because of that and was even accused of being on the so-called client list that now apparently doesn't exist, and is saying what I said 2 weeks ago when this whole thing first blew up. Dershowitz, who spoke with Lidia Curanaj yesterday, is suggesting the 20-year prison sentence of Epstein's confidant, Galilea Maxwell, be commuted in exchange for her testifying. For the record, I said she should get a reduced sentence or drastically reduced sentence because she served a few years already. I don't think her sentence should be commuted, but whatever.
Professor, what do you say to people that say, well, what about Galilea Maxwell? You know, she was Epstein's former assistant, girlfriend. She's now serving a 20-year sentence. She didn't sex traffic herself, so there obviously has to be abusers. Why aren't they behind bars? Why is this woman the only person that has now been held accountable for these heinous crimes?
Well, first of all, I don't know of any abusers other than Jeffrey Epstein and the people surrounding him. I don't know whether or not any of these people were trafficked to other people. The people all deny it, and there's been no real evidence of that. Galilea Maxwell is basically serving the sentence that Epstein would have gotten. She should never be in jail for 20 years. What should happen is she should be freed. She should have her sentence commuted. She should then be called in front of Congress, have Congress give her total immunity, and then she can tell everything. She knows everything. She knows where, she made all the travel arrangements. When I had to go down to represent him as his lawyer, she was the person I called. Oh, I need to go to Palm Beach, arrange for the plane, arrange for the hotel. So she knows everything. And I think she is improperly serving a sentence at this point in time and should be released for time served and let her then disclose everything. She would have no reason for withholding anything.
So let's talk about this $10 billion lawsuit. Murdoch owns the Wall Street Journal and Fox News. So when the report broke, Fox News host Laura Ingraham, it happened while I think she was on the air right before she went on, and she was teasing the story, the Wall Street Journal report. And take a look at this.
Coming out, Democrats pretend to care about an issue that has the podcast world going crazy. We're asking for transparency. But we have new news coming on about this as well from the Wall Street Journal, a new report tonight. Next.
So, Professor, the interesting part is they never ended up reporting this story. Now President Trump suing for $10 billion after what happened with ABC News' George Stephanopoulos, 60 Minutes, CBS News. Trump won bigly. Does this case, this lawsuit, the $10 billion now against Murdoch, does it have legs? What do you think, sir?
Well, I'll probably be called as a witness in the case because they also called me and they said that you wrote him a letter with a mock cover of Vanity Fair. And I said, I may have. I don't remember. This was 23 years ago. Just send me a copy of the letter with my signature and I'll tell you whether it was authentic or not. And they said they couldn't do it. And so they published the story without authenticating it with me. And that will be an important point in trying to prove malice. So I suspect I will be a witness if this case ever goes to trial.
And, Professor, before I let you go, New York Socialist Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, she posted this tweet about Trump. She wrote, wow, who would have thought that electing a rapist would have complicated the release of the Epstein files? We all know that President Trump was never convicted of rape. Do you think President Trump should file another lawsuit, a defamation lawsuit against this member of Congress as well, sir?
Definitely. It's a far stronger suit than it would be against the Wall Street Journal because everybody knows that not only was he not convicted of being a rapist, he was acquitted of that charge specifically. And she's making it up in the face of knowledge that it isn't true. So it would be much easier to prove malice against her than to prove it against the Wall Street Journal. So I don't see any reason if he's going to sue the Wall Street Journal why he shouldn't sue her as well. No, he's going to have to sit down and be deposed himself, but he doesn't seem to be concerned about that because everything about him is public. There are very few secrets left about Donald Trump.
Peeling back the layers. Harvard law professor, attorney Alan Dershowitz on Newsmax. I guess a lawsuit against AOC will be next. Dershowitz said he has a much better case. Trump has a much better case against AOC's false claims than against the Wall Street Journal. And how about that? The Journal, surprisingly, wasn't able to produce Dershowitz's letter either. In President Trump's lawsuit, he says the Journal falsely claimed that he authored, drew, and signed a letter to Epstein containing salacious language and a hand-drawn naked woman, and that no authentic letter or picture exists. Last night, Michael Savage, host of The Savage Nation on Newsmax, spoke with author and filmmaker Dinesh D'Souza about the Epstein case and the Biden autopen scandal.
I particularly don't care that much about this myself. To me, it seems like a salacious distraction from the world's real problems. But yet, Trump went ballistic and said his weaklings and past supporters buying into the Epstein hoax. Now, all of a sudden, anyone who asks about Epstein is a weakling or something. His own son is saying release the Epstein files. Do you think that this story is important enough to warrant our attention, first of all?
Well,
I think whether it is or not, there's no question that this is a passionate issue with a good bit of the MAGA base. And I think the reason for it is multiple. One of it, of course, is the absolute sordid nature of any kind of child trafficking.
Sordid.
The second part of it is the potential involvement of the deep state, the intelligence services. The very idea that you could have, the intelligence services, either ours or some foreign intelligence service, somehow manipulating Epstein drives people insane. Because this places the corruption squarely in the hands of the U.S. government, in some ways in collusion maybe with other governments. Mm-hmm. I think a third factor is just that the MAGA base is just allergic to being lied to, and is also very allergic to the idea that anything short of full transparency is acceptable. Now, I do think that in the real world, you don't often get full transparency. Mm-hmm. I think, moreover, that it's quite possible that there are reasons for not releasing the information that are quite apparent to Trump, but he doesn't want us to know what they are.
Which is only increasing the demand for the release.
Exactly. But you could apply by analogy the same compass to other issues. Let's say, for example, the Iran nuclear facilities, because the MAGA people, again, and there were a bunch of them, not all, but many, who are like, prove to me that Iran is on the verge of building a nuclear weapon. And Trump was like, I don't have to prove it to you. You elected me as the commander in chief. I get these briefings every day. You don't. I know stuff that you don't. And you put me in charge of taking action. So we don't have a direct democracy where you decide to hit the missile launch buttons. I do. So I think I get the sense from Trump's tone that he's annoyed. And he's annoyed because I think he thinks that his own guys don't have enough confidence in him and aren't willing to believe that even though he's not telling us the reason, there is a good reason.
Trust in daddy. So his own son, Donald Trump Jr., just said he wants the list released, which I thought was astounding.
This has been the consistent position of all the MAGA people, is we want to know what happened. This was a campaign promise by Trump. So there's that. I don't know what happened here. I mean, part of it is the strange behavior of Pam Bondi. I've got the list on my desk, and then suddenly there is no list.
Yeah, here's the list. We're releasing it. I have it on my desk. And what list are you talking about? There is no list. Of course, that's going to provoke rage.
Of course.
Dinesh D'Souza on Newsmax last night.
This whole Biden autopen scandal. I mean, there's a good chance that these pardons can be invalidated, right? But instead
That's a great question. Okay, so if it's by autopen, who's going to invalidate these pardons?
Well, I think the way to invalidate them would just be for the DOJ to say something like, we've done a review of the requirements of a pardon. We've concluded that these pardons are invalid. Now, immediately, this would be challenged in court, right? Of course. But this then puts the issue of Biden's mental competence on trial, because the court now has to look and see whether Biden was even all there when he authorized these pardons supposedly orally. I have a pardon sitting actually in my office here. And pardons have rather specific requirements. First of all, they say this is personally signed by me on so-and-so date at so-and-so location. Clearly, Biden did not do that. The autopen did that. A pardon is not like a DocuSign or a digital signature that you can do online. It requires the president not only to sign, but to specifically, it's not like I pardon the mafia, I pardon the Corleones. It has to be I pardon this guy and I pardon that guy. So Biden didn't do any of these things. And so it would be really interesting to push this. I don't know if the Trump administration is going to, but to me, it's actually a great opportunity.
Again, filmmaker and author Dinesh D'Souza on Savage Nation with Michael Savage. That is Sunday nights, 8 p.m. Eastern, only on Newsmax. And we go from President Biden to Hunter Biden. This is Rita Cosby, host of Saturday Report.
We all know of Hunter Biden's checkered past. What we don't hear about is the collateral damage done? Jason Galanis is a former business associate of Hunter Biden's. And in 2020, Galanis was sentenced to over 14 years in federal prison on fraud charges. President Trump commuted Galanis' sentence earlier this year after Galanis testified as part of the House GOP impeachment inquiry for then President Biden.
During the years of 2014-2015, our business included the acquisition of 85-year-old Wall Street firm Burnham & Company, the $1.5 billion surviving division of Drexel Burnham Lambert. Our objective was to build a diversified private equity platform, which would be anchored by globally known Wall Street brand together with a globally known political name, Biden. Our goal, that is Hunter Biden, Devin Archer, and me, was to make billions, not millions.
Well, his testimony included claims of a 2014 phone call involving then Vice President Biden, Hunter, and the mayor of Moscow. And Jason Galanis joins us now in a Newsmax exclusive. Jason, it is really great to have you here. I cannot imagine what you've been through. First off, your sentence has been commuted. How grateful are you to the current administration and to President Trump?
Words can't express it, Rita. It is a privilege to be recognized by the president, to have Congress believe my testimony, and it to result in my freedom and rectifying part of an injustice caused by the Bidens.
Walk people through a little bit of what you heard, because you were right there in the throes of it, Jason, on so many of the big decisions. The mayor of Moscow, a whole bunch of folks all over, a lot of these very sort of controversial figures that many of us have heard about with Hunter Biden and the Biden family. But you were there firsthand. Tell us a little bit about what you witnessed and what you saw firsthand.
Some of the things are surreal in hindsight, but they ended up being corroborated by Congress. So I provided documentation, travel documentation, times and places of meetings, and some of those things were astonishing. So, for example, secret meetings in Brooklyn, New York, with the mayor of Moscow and his wife, a multi-billionaire. That meeting also included getting the then VP Joe Biden on the telephone to encourage and help the investment from Russia into Hunter and my Devin Archer's company. So saw that firsthand. Likewise with the Chinese. It was pretty shocking. That was overtures from the Chinese Communist Party, a company called Harvest, to hire Joe Biden as a director of the company. And we negotiated that while he was vice president.
So what you are saying is also that you physically saw that. You heard him on the phone. This is not sort of a second or third hand, correct?
Yeah, this is direct. This was and was proven and made its way into the impeachment report of the 118th Congress. So it was a corroborated set of facts that we proved, and Vice President Biden skated on that.
Were you surprised that here is then Vice President of the United States involved in these calls, in part in these calls, listening to these calls? And how engaged was he also, Jason?
At the time, it was taken aback. Hearing the voice of a sitting vice president was pretty shocking. So, yes, it was. There's no doubt about it. In hindsight now, having the benefit of seeing all the evidence that has come out, it's not surprising. It was endemic, and it was a pattern of behavior of the family, not just Hunter, not a drug-addled person. This was a smart lawyer who had a very tactical approach to what he was doing and what his father was doing, using the office of the vice president.
Jason Galanis, the former business partner of Hunter Biden and Devin Archer, on Saturday Report with Rita Cosby. Obviously, the impeachment inquiry did not lead to an impeachment of President Biden. Hunter Biden, who was charged, was pardoned retroactively for 10 years, as Jason mentioned. However, that may be part of the autopen investigation. But now the House investigation into the Bidens is much more focused on the people around the president that covered up his mental and physical health than it is on any of this other stuff. And let's wrap it up with Chris Salcedo, who spoke with Kari Lake about a former Voice of America employee who threatened to kill Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene.
Speaking of Voice of America, there's this ex-Voice of America employee, 64-year-old Seth Jason, allegedly threatened to murder Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene and her family. Federal prosecutors say the threats were made between October 2023 and January 21st of this year, before President Trump's return to the Oval Office. According to reports, he used phones in the control rooms where the broadcasters were reporting to make his threats. Now, see, in my view, this story shows how dangerous and incompetent the vetting process used by this bloated and unaccountable government is. They'll hire any psycho, it seems. What does it say to you?
Anybody who would do this is a psycho. You're absolutely right. It's a dangerous person using phone call or using phones, taxpayer-funded phones at a taxpayer-funded facility, a taxpayer-funded employee on taxpayer-funded time to allegedly make death threats and assassination threats against a sitting member of Congress. It is despicable and it's sickening. And if he is proven to be guilty, I hope they throw the book at him. 27 years in federal prison is what this gentleman is facing. And these threats were serious. I mean, for 15 months, Marjorie Taylor Greene was living in fear that somebody was going to show up at one of her events and shoot and kill her. Her staff was living in fear. Their families were living in fear. And these calls were coming from inside Voice of America. I'm sickened by it. I'm glad that they finally arrested him. We got to give Judge Janine, who is the U.S. attorney out of the District of Columbia, credit for getting on top of this and taking it very seriously. These threats are serious, and this man is now behind bars.
Kari Lake on the Chris Salcedo Show. In other news, Arkansas Republican Senator Tom Cotton, who chairs the Intelligence Committee and serves on the Senate Armed Services Committee, has sent a letter to Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth asking him to investigate Microsoft's use of Chinese engineers that are reportedly working to maintain military cloud computing systems. We are so infiltrated by China, it's insane. And it's scary. According to Reuters, Senator Cotton became concerned after reading a report about the above in the ProPublica publication last week. Texas Governor Greg Abbott has called a special meeting of the state legislature in Austin today to discuss flood warning systems, communications, and infrastructure, as well as the use of relief funds that are desperately needed after the deadly 4th of July flooding that killed at least 135 people, including many children. There are at least 3 people still missing. More than 1,000 search and recovery crews are still on the ground there in Texas as well. On Wall Street, stocks were set to open in the green this morning, with the S&P 500 and the NASDAQ hovering at all-time highs, and traders are focused and will be focused throughout this week on earnings and more earnings. More than 100 S&P 500 companies are reporting earnings this week. Companies like Alphabet, the parent company of Google, Tesla, Lockheed Martin, Northrop Grumman, General Motors, Coca-Cola, marquee companies. It is going to be quite a week, along with anything that President Trump may say or do on tariffs. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick over the weekend again said he's confident that the U.S. will be securing a trade deal with the EU very soon. Plus, South Korea's national security advisor is headed to Washington, reportedly to secure a trade deal as well. Bitcoin is basically flat this morning at 118,500 or so. Most other cryptocurrencies higher, with Ethereum just above 3,800 and XRP at $3.54. President Trump is having lunch with Vice President Vance at the White House today. Outside of that, in his daily briefing, he has no other scheduled events on the calendar, but that, doesn't mean we won't hear from the president at some time or 2 or 3 times. As we kick off the new week, be sure to keep up with all of the news and breaking developments throughout the day on Newsmax, N2, and at Newsmax.com. Also, make sure you have the app so you can stay up to date anywhere, anytime. The news starts each and every morning with Wake Up America, followed by National Report, Newsline at noon, all the way to Greta Van Susteren at 6. Rob Schmidt tonight, the briefing with Ed Henry, Finnerty, Greg Kelly reports at 9, and much, much more. I'm Tony Marino. Thank you, as always, for checking out the Newsmax Daily. Continue to share it with your friends, family, and pretty much anybody else. Just share it. Enjoy the rest of your Monday. Maybe have some junk food and keep on fighting the good fight.
News breaks every minute, every day. You need the app, the Newsmax app. Find it free on your smartphone store. Then watch us anytime, anywhere.
Information. Truth. Is freedom. Is Newsmax. It's real news for real people.